I'd like to start off by introducing myself. My name is Christine Chaverdian, and I will be your moderator today. I'm an associate lawyer in my third year of practice at Dalvukovich LLP, which is a commercial real estate and leasing law firm in Toronto, Canada. And my practice focuses on commercial leasing, where I'm responsible for reviewing, drafting, and negotiating all forms of leases and ancillary agreements in retail, office, and industrial properties. But today's not about me. Today we have three wonderful panelists joining us from New York, Los Angeles, and Toronto, who will each give us some insight into their practice areas. But before introducing each of our panelists, I'd like to point out that for those of you joining, you can submit any questions you have through the chat feature or the Q&A feature, and I'll be monitoring them as we go, and we'll address them during our Q&A period at the end. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Yelena Nersesyan. Yelena is a real estate associate at Skadden, based in New York. She advises clients on joint ventures, acquisitions, dispositions, leasing, financing, and refinancing of commercial real estate properties, including hotels, retail, industrial sites, office buildings, and multifamily housing throughout the US. Yelena also works with clients on real estate matters for corporate and restructuring transactions, including mergers and acquisitions, private equity investments, and corporate finance. She is a member of the Women's Committee of the Central Park Conservancy and is the co-chair of the Scholarship Committee of the Armenian Bar Association. And Yelena is also a classically trained pianist and enjoys playing the piano in her spare time. Welcome, Yelena.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Edgar Khalatian. Edgar is a partner at Mayer Brown in Los Angeles, where he leads the firm's land use practice group. Edgar advises investors and developers through all aspects of the real estate entitlement and development process, focusing on land use entitlement matters. He helps developers navigate state and local regulations and authorities. And he also assists in the litigation of cases at both the trial and appellate level, and has been involved with numerous high-profile and complex land use projects in California. And in his spare time, Edgar enjoys backpacking in the wilderness. Welcome, Edgar.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Alex Kolanjian, who is a partner in the commercial real estate group at Fogler Rubinoff in Toronto. And Alex acts for landlords, tenants, First Nations, developers, franchisors, franchisees, lenders, and property managers in respect of industrial, commercial, retail, residential, cannabis, and office leases. And he also acts for clients on a number of corporate and commercial matters, including advising on, drafting, and negotiating various commercial contracts. Alex has written articles on commercial leasing. He's led roundtables and made presentations at the International Council of Shopping Centers and the Law Society of Ontario. Alex also loves movies and has been on the board of the Pomegranate Film Festival here in Toronto for the last 10 years, which focuses on Armenian-inspired film. Welcome, Alex, and welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll jump right into it, bearing in mind that we only have 1 hour here. And I have a list of questions, and my first questions I'll address to all three of you. So I guess we can start with Yelena. How long have you been practicing in this practice area, and what inspired you to pursue a career in commercial real estate and leasing?
Thank you, Christine. I've been practicing in this area for about 9 years now. In the beginning of my career, I had exposure to other areas of law, such as immigration, trust and estates, matrimonial, but I was sort of more interested in real estate, and eventually I decided to focus on real estate law. I like that real estate transactions are dynamic. A typical deal sort of runs between 2 to 4 months. It's very busy, exciting, and when we close one, we start working on another one. I would say that what I really like about real estate, because it is a tangible asset. Often when I walk in New York City, I see the properties that I worked on. That's always feels good. Some of my projects also include affordable housing or sort of community public space components. And I think it's nice to see that your work adds value to the community or changes the footprint of the city.
That's great. I like the part about the being a tangible asset and driving through the city and seeing your work. I always think the same. Alex, what about you?
What inspired me to get into commercial leasing? So as a kid, I always used to go to shopping malls, and I always wondered, what sort of legal relationship governed, the parties there and allowed the tenants to actually be there. So naturally, I pursued commercial leasing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I started my career at a small firm. I practiced corporate law and commercial leasing. I had no idea what commercial leasing really was or what it entailed. I had taken property and real estate transactions in law school, but I never thought I'd end up practicing in real estate. When I moved to my current firm about 12 years ago, they were looking for specifically a commercial leasing lawyer. And I took the opportunity to specialize, and I haven't really looked back. The commercial leasing bar here is fairly tight, as Christine knows, and everyone knows everyone. We refer clients to one another. We speak at the same conferences. So it's nice being part of something like that.
That's great. And you've been at the same firm this entire time, Alex?
I've been practicing for 16 years. I was at another firm, a smaller firm, for about 4 years. Yeah.
Edgar, what about you? How long have you been practicing and what inspired you?
So I've been practicing for about 22 years, almost 22 years. Similar to Yelena in the sense of I love the tangible asset. I love knowing, my practice is very Southern California centric, and drive by a site that's vacant dirt or just a parking lot and know that if I do my job right, it'll end up being a 50-story residential tower. And then driving by a couple of years later and actually seeing the tower is a great feeling. I love pointing it out to my kids and saying, I did that. But I specifically got into land use because it's obviously a very nuanced practice, primarily because I love politics. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I hate reading, I hate writing, and I really hate researching. So not a lot out there to do, but I love the fact that the practice is very people centric. Half of a land use practice, 50% of the time I'm lobbying, whether it's a government official or a neighbor that doesn't want the 50-story tower next to them. I love sitting down with somebody who hates me and hates what I'm doing, but walking away an hour later with their support, and they actually pretend to like me. So it's good. I like it.
That's great. Again, my next question, and maybe we'll go in the same order, starting with Yelena. Can you provide a general overview of what your day-to-day looks like? Maybe a little bit about work-life balance, whether or not you go to court, or if you're involved with litigation or strictly transactional, that kind of thing.
Sure. My practice is strictly transactional, so I don't go to court. But to the extent that there are any potential, litigation issues or claims, we'll consult with our real estate litigation team here. My day typically starts with sort of responding to all the emails I received overnight or in the morning. And then I'll sort of check in with my teams. As a senior attorney, I have generally 3 to 4 deals at the same time, and each deal has a team. So we'll check in to see how things are going, how we're moving towards the closing. We'll discuss any open issues, outstanding documents, and sort of discuss the next steps. Part of my day would be dedicated to drafting, negotiating, getting on the calls with the other side. Of course, we also try to attend firm events like department events, networking, business development. That's all sort of part of our day to the extent that we can. In terms of work balance, well, it depends on the transaction. There are times that are very busy. During the busy periods, we are always available. You're expected to be available over the weekend if necessary and be very responsive. But there are also times when we're not very busy, so you have more time to do other things.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I'm interested to hear everyone's perspective on work-life balance, especially given that we're all coming from different cities. Okay, so the same question, I guess, Alex, you're up next.
Yeah. So my day really depends on whether or not I'm working remotely or from the office. So I'm in the office 2 to 3 days a week. I usually start anywhere from 7 a.m. to 9:30, and I usually finish from 7 to 9 p.m. I work weekends whenever I need to. I always try and take an hour out for lunch when I'm in the office to connect with colleagues, friends, and clients. It helps to break up the day, and it's good in terms of networking and development of relationships and things like that. As Christine mentioned, I act for a lot of different types of entities: landlords, tenants, property managers, lenders, First Nations, even on everything from retail to office, industrial, renewable energy. So on a given day, I might be reviewing or drafting or negotiating a lease from anything from a fast food restaurant in a shopping center to a large automotive plant on industrial land to an office on First Nations land. I also, as a partner, I oversee large-scale lease review projects for our lender clients, as well as parts of corporate transactions and real estate transactions. I bring in clients as well who are serviced by our other departments like corporate employment, condo, transactional real estate, IP, tax, estate, and litigation. So I don't go to court, but I do bring in litigation clients. I sometimes deal with pre-litigation matters where I help parties to settle, and I sometimes advise our litigators as to what leases mean and things like that. I find that a part of every day is dedicated to client management, as well as administrative matters like billing and sometimes even collections, which is not the most fun. I also dedicate a lot of time to writing papers and articles, like Christine mentioned, speaking at seminars, networking, and entertaining clients at lunches, dinners, sporting events, etc. There's a big focus on bringing in work. In terms of a balance, it's possible. So I do have a very supportive wife, which is really important, and two energetic, vocal little girls. And I always try and spend time with them on the days I work remotely, even when they barge into my office with a diaper or something like that, which has happened, or tell me that they threw up as they're yelling on a conference call that everyone can hear about. But it's important to try to get that balance in. So I do try to have that family time. We try to schedule a family trip every year where we try to disconnect as much as possible. It's important to work with good associates and other partners so they can sort of help with your clients while you're away. A lot of my friends are also clients, and a lot of my clients become friends. So when I go out with them, it's like killing two birds with one stone. And as Christine mentioned, I serve on the board of the Pomegranate Armenian Film Festival, and I'm also on the Ontario chapter of the Armenian Bar Association board. So it's all about balancing and pursuing your own interests. I find that it's really important not just to do law and to pursue your own personal interests as much as you can as possible. It makes you a more balanced individual, and it gives you sort of a better perspective on life.
Thanks, Alex. What about you, Edgar?
So my typical day, I think hours are similar to Alex. I'm usually in about 7:30, 7:45. Typically leave the office 6:45, 7 o'clock. But I at least 3, if not 4 nights a week, there's some type of either business development or lobbying type of event or activity that I'm at. So I typically don't get home till 9:30, 10 o'clock most nights. Whether it's entertaining clients, folks from the community, elected officials, and so forth. It's just an important part of the practice. During the day, for the most part, I lead the language practice at the firm, so I have a team of other partners and associates that do vast majority of the work. So at this point in the career, most of my time is spent either on calls, advising clients on sort of high level issues, or frankly, just directly lobbying in meetings. Not much, what I'd say, sort of real legal work at this point in time as it relates to the practice.
That's great.
But it's every day really is different. It's I think one of the realities of the more senior you become, the more you're just putting out fires. I really don't know what my day is going to bring. I don't know what the next hour is going to bring because I don't know what fire I'm going to get a call to deal with. So it's mostly fire suppression.
Thanks. And I think you just touched on it a little bit, but I was going to ask maybe you and Alex if you think or how you think your work-life balance changed from becoming from an associate to a partner. Do you feel like you have more management of it now? Is it more of a work-life balance or less of a work-life balance because you're a partner?
It's both. Right. I think the reality is when you're a partner, you do work more, both billable, but frankly, you and have a lot more non-billable responsibilities and obligations, firm-wide to your partners and to the team, everything from coaching, training, mentoring. On the flip, when you're an associate, and then I think we'll get to this later, in my mind, when you're an associate, your only client isn't the client that's actually paying the bills, it's the client. The client is your partner, the person who you report to. So your work-life balance really depends upon them. I think, and I think being available, frankly, 24/7 is very important. So it's hard to manage yourself. But as a partner, I can manage my life, right? I don't frankly answer to anybody. So if my son has a soccer match at 4 o'clock, I can leave at 3 o'clock, go watch his match, maybe take a call or two during, but then work until 10 o'clock at night to get it done. No one's asking me, where were you for 2 hours in the middle of the day? So it provides some more flexibility, but definitely much, I'd say more work, billable and non, and certainly a lot more stress managing everything, right? It's when you're an associate, your goal is I got to hit my 8 hours a day or whatever your firm's requirements are. As a partner, it's not only do I have to hit that, but I've got to make sure the 7 people that work for me have sufficient work for them to be hitting their 8 hours. Are they meeting deadlines? And it's really managing a lot of people in addition to the billable work requirement.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with everything that Edgar said. It becomes a lot more responsibility, I find, and your focus changes. It becomes more about relationships and maintaining those relationships with clients than necessarily about always just doing the work, and about bringing in work. That's another big change I found from becoming from an associate to a partner is you become responsible for actually bringing in the work that you and other people do. So
And all 3 of us are in the real estate world, so our workload is somewhat cyclical. And some folks sometimes get happy that things are slowing down, but as a partner, that is when, at least for me, I am most stressed is when you're sort of in a downturn and things are slowing down, because as I tell everybody on the team, their mortgage is my obligation, right? All they got to do is show up and work. I got to make sure that I'm generating enough work to keep them busy so they're not laid off, so they can make their mortgage, so they can pay their kids' school tuition. That's frankly a lot more pressure on a person than just showing up and working.
yeah. And when it's slow, that's, I guess, as a partner, when you're really going out there and you're pounding the pavement or you're trying to bring in that work. So you might not have work on your desk, but that doesn't mean there's no work to be done elsewhere. Yeah. But it's great. All of that aside, there's a lot of benefits to
Absolutely.
being a partner. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, that's great. That's helpful. And I like that you what you mentioned, Edgar, about as an associate, your client is not only your client, but also people you report to, which explains why I had to let the partners know that I was sneaking away 20 minutes earlier today to make this webinar. Okay, my next question is for Alex, actually. So Alex, we mentioned that you're on your firm's leasing team. Do you work primarily on the landlord side, the tenant side, or both? And can you tell us a bit about the differences acting for each side?
Sure. So I do both. I do landlord and tenant work. I'd say it's about 60% landlord, 40% tenant. Our landlord clients own things like shopping centers, office buildings, retail plazas, land for renewable energy projects. I act on the tenant side, I act for multinational restaurant chains, office tenants, again, renewable energy producers, cannabis chains, things like that. And while both sides have the same vested interest in getting the deal done, landlords generally have much more leverage and are able to push their position on the smaller tenants. Some tenants do have some clout, or their chains, or they have relationships with the landlord. So you have a little bit of power there, but generally landlords, you have a lot more power in your negotiation. On the flip side, some tenants, like these multinational ones, they have things like specific language they look for in their leases, and that's often an uphill battle in negotiating that with particular landlords. On the landlord side, we want to make sure that the landlord is adequately protected. So we push for things like deposits, guarantors, things like that. And we also want to keep their lenders happy. So even if you're acting for a lender, you're also thinking about other parties' interests. And then from a tenant's side, we're also trying to make sure that the tenancy is preserved in case there's a change of a landlord or there's a sale or something like that. So different interests, but ultimately the same interest in getting the deal done.
Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty much the same in my practice as well, both of them, but more so landlord, and it's definitely a landlord friendly world out there. And Alex, what are some examples of the types of contracts that you negotiate or draft?
So there's a lot more than you'd think in leasing, a number of contracts. So there's the things like the core documents that are used to allow the use of space. So there are the term sheets, the offers to lease, agreements to lease, and then the actual leases and license agreements. Then there are ancillary documents to those, like notices or short form of lease that we register on title to protect a tenant. Non-disturbance and subordination agreement, which are negotiated with the landlord's lender, so all in protecting the tenant. There's agreements that come later during a tenancy, such as amending agreements, extension agreements that are used to prolong the lease, control agreements where a tenant needs a landlord's help to lease the space on their behalf, termination or surrender agreements where you want the tenancy to end early. Sometimes a tenant wants to transfer their lease to another party, so there could be an assignment or a sublease. Then the landlord may need to provide a consent agreement allowing for that to happen. If a property is being sold or refinanced, tenants can sometimes even ask landlords to provide estoppel certificates or tenant acknowledgements, which are basically like a snapshot of the state of the lease at a certain point in time. Sometimes we have to deal with property in a lease space, and we deal with things like waivers. Then there's letters of credit, deposit agreements, guarantees, indemnities that secure the tenant's obligations under the lease. And talking about pre-litigation, I'm often asked to draft demand letters to tenants, telling them what they haven't done and what they need to do to fix it, and by when, otherwise their lease could be terminated. So there's quite a few documents that go into the commercial leasing world.
That's great. I'll ask my next question to both Alex and Edgar, so we can get both of their perspectives coming from different markets. And I guess we touched on it a little bit when we were talking about work-life balance between or the differences from being an associate to a partner. But can you tell us a bit about the trajectory to becoming a partner and what firms are looking for and what the expectation is? Maybe Edgar, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we'll give Alex a little break there. And I can speak to a trajectory on what I call sort of big firm world, because I suspect it might be different. But I spent the first decade of my career at Paul Hastings, and I remember we would start off the summer with 35 first years. By year 3, you're about half. Year 5 or 6, you're down to maybe 7 or 8, and by year 8, when it's partnership, you've got 1 or 2 left. So it is a dog-eat-dog world. It's not easy sticking it out for as long as it takes. But I think how I would answer that. A couple of years ago, a junior associate on my team came up to me and said, "I feel like you're playing favorites." And I sort of looked at him and said, "You're right. I am absolutely playing favorites." Of course, had the shocked look on his face of like, "Well, what do you mean? You're not supposed to play favorites." And I said, "Listen, I'm going to play favorites to the one that gives me the best quality work, the one that if I email at 5 o'clock on a Friday saying, 'Sorry, but I need this tomorrow morning,' I know is going to get it done. I'm going to play favorites to the one that's going to be here early and doesn't leave until I leave to make sure everything that's necessary is done." And that's just the reality of it, right? At the end of the day, as an associate, if your goal is to make partner, and fully recognizing that most don't want to make partner, which is obviously entirely fine. If the goal is to be a partner, you've got to understand that your primary goal, 2 goals, are do the best legal work you can possibly do and be as available as you can to the partners. And you know, I'm older, I'm old school, and I know things are a little bit different now. But firms will say what they say. At the end of the day, when it's time for you to make partner, and just effective January, I promoted someone on my team to partnership, and that's what it came down to. Is if I get sick all of a sudden and I'm gone for a week, do I know that you can carry the practice? Are you going to step up? Do you have that work ethic, that maturity? Can you deal with clients? But all of that comes from the core of really being available and doing work. And I think that's really what it comes down to. I think nowadays a lot of younger, both lawyers and frankly in every profession, is so much more focused on work-life balance and you know, maybe minimizing the amount of work they do, and that's entirely an individual decision. And I'm certainly not the person to tell anybody what the right thing to do is. But if the goal is to make partner, you know, doing great legal work and being as accessible as often as you can to the partnership is a paramount interest. I'll say when I started, I think lawyers were much more of a prestige position than we are now. Now what I tell juniors is you're frankly no different than the guy or gal selling shoes at Nordstrom. We're service providers. And as great as I might think I am, as great as I know Alex and Yelena are, if a client calls them once or twice and it takes 2 days for a callback, they're calling the next big lawyer, right? You go to Nordstrom and you can't get anybody's attention because you want to buy a particular pair of shoes. You're gonna walk down to the mall to Bloomingdale's and buy the shoes there. We're no different. And I think you come out of law school with this ego of I'm a lawyer, I'm at a big firm, I'm this and I'm that. We're all fungible. I don't care how great we are. So understanding that we're a service provider is a really big learning curve, I think.
Noted. And I can't imagine it being too different for Canada, but Alex, what's your experience?
Yeah, so that service provider comment rings true because I've had that same discussion with partners at my firm, and it takes a while for people to understand that and realize that yes, we are lawyers, we went to law school, it's a very respected profession, but at the end of the day, we're providing a service, and people can go elsewhere if they don't like our service. So that really rings true. But I can give you sort of the view of what it was like for me, or what it's like at my firm and becoming a partner in Toronto. So it does vary from firm to firm, but with most of the medium to large firms, there are actually different levels of partnership. And at my firm, you start as an associate, you do your work, you hit your targets, you're profitable, you start to develop clients. At around year 5, you may hit that first level of partnership, which is called income partnership, and it gives you that title of partner and you get some tax benefits. If you continue to develop your practice, you become an expert, you're working well with others, you're proving yourself to be indispensable, that's really important. You could hit the second level of my firm, which is called an LPSP, or a limited profit sharing partner, and that may be year 7 or 8 out. That's reserved for lawyers that the firm thinks are going to become that equity or capital partner eventually, but they're not quite there yet. If at that stage, if the firm does well, you're getting your salary, you're also getting a guaranteed percentage of your salary as a bonus, in addition to another potential bonus. Finally, so your trajectory around year 9 or 10, if you're meeting the firm's financial thresholds, you're bringing in work, you have your billings, you can demonstrate firm-mindedness. This has become more of a focus lately, and you're involved with firm initiatives. So you're going out, you're speaking, you're networking. You may be offered equity partnership if your department recommends you. I know that certain firms actually require an application before you can become a full partner. And equity partnership involves a financial contribution to the firm. And in addition to your salary and potential bonus, you'd receive a share of the firm's profits, which that really varies from year to year. Profitability is very important. That's something that's looked at from associates in their early years to later on. I think what they say is you want to be bringing in terms of billings 3 times what your salary is in order to cover the firm's expenses and be profitable. And there's always discretion when it comes to timing and criteria for each level of partnership. So as a young lawyer, I always say to our associates, you need to develop your expertise You have to create great relationships. A lot of my clients now are people I knew from law school. They're people on the other side of deals. It's just grow your network. You never treat everyone well. You never know who's going to end up being your client. Make sure and serve your clients well. You don't know who, maybe you're working with someone who's a junior at the beginning of your career at someone else's client. Years later, that person could be the person directing work at a big client who's sending it to you. So you have to treat everyone well and the same essentially. And you need to get involved with the firm outside of just billable work. So be on committees, go and speak. In the current climate, I highly recommend that associates attend the office as much as possible. So with COVID, people weren't in the office as much. I've seen a reluctance of people to come back to the office. We're not mandating everyone to come back 5 days a week, but if you're young and you're looking to learn and you're an associate, the best way to learn is by shadowing people. So ask that partner, can I be on that call? Can I be in that meeting? Can I go see how you network? And I find that's the best way to learn and eventually move towards partnership if that's what you're looking for.
So, Chris, I'm gonna supplement my answer a little bit because Alex went into great detail, and I will point out some differences. In the US, most firms either have a single tier or two-tier partnership, income partner and equity partner. Some firms just have equity. Income partner, you're typically eligible year 8, and you are still a salaried employee with a bonus at will. You can be let go the following day and so forth, but you have the partner title to generate work, which does matter, and you have access to all the firm's financials and partner retreats and all of those events. To make income partner, what the firm is really looking for is everything Alex said. Active in the firm, committees, present, people know you, people like you. You've done your hours, and I think the key differentiating factor is showing an ability to generate work. And some firms cap out income partners. You have 2 or 3 years and you make equity, or we're going to ask you to leave. Some firms have no sunset. We at Mayer Brown, for example, do not have a sunset. Once we feel that equity partner, once that equity partner actually starts to generate work and like, okay, now you deserve to be equity, you become an equity partner, full vote of the partnership again to do that. At that point, you do have to buy in, and it's a significant financial contribution to becoming a partner at the firm. But you're not salary. Your compensation is entirely dependent upon how well the firm is doing. So, for example, I won't know how much I'm getting paid in 2024 until probably about March of 25. And by 70–80% of my compensation will be paid between December of 23 and March of 24. Because again, got to pay the associates, got to pay rent, got to pay all the expenses. This is how much we have left, and depending on how well each partner did, the profits are distributed. So it is really owning like a small business. You've got a lot of those implications. I mean, and I'm sure Alex is in the same boat, but I pay taxes in, I think, 11 countries and 14 states throughout, the US. So as an equity partner, you own the business. So if we have a client in Charlotte that's generating business, and North Carolina law says if you have a business in North Carolina, you got to pay taxes. I'm not paying taxes in North Carolina, even though I've never done anything there. One of my partners did, for example.
That's helpful. No, I didn't know this, and it's good to know what the timeline looks like for both of the firms. My next question is for you, Yelena. What are the most common types of properties that you deal with? So whether it's industrial, retail, office, and can you provide some examples of how they differ from each other?
Sure. I would say that my transactions touch upon a wide range of property types. We call them asset classes in the industry. Some of the examples are, office buildings, which is self-explanatory. They can range from a small building to New York City skyscrapers. Hospitality, which includes, hotels, restaurants, theaters, sports venues, golf courses, Industrial, there has been a lot of activity in industrial asset class, including warehouses, storage facilities, manufacturing facilities. We see a lot of activity, especially with last mile sort of delivery services. For example, Amazon buys a lot of warehouses sort of closer to large cities like New York City or Toronto to make sure that we get our same day, deliveries when we need to. There is also multifamily, which generally includes everything residential except for single family homes. We have seen a lot of activity in data center space with the development of artificial intelligence and cloud computing. We see many investments in data centers. We also see something called defensive acquisition because not every land is suitable for data center construction. So we see investors identifying the land throughout the country and sort of investing in this land preemptively until they have development or a tenant. There has been a lot of activity in student housing and senior and assisted living facilities. They used to be part of sort of multifamily asset class, but they have become so popular that, investors view them as a separate asset class. And last but not least, I would say life sciences properties. It's an asset class of its own, especially after the pandemic. We have seen a lot of activity in life sciences properties, meaning these are properties that are generally used as a lab or research and development facility by pharmaceutical or biotech companies.
That's interesting, and that you pointed because of the pandemic. So how did that affect office space in your practice? Do you find that it's less and less, or it's no changes with
Well,
people?
I think one of the issues that large cities still have is sort of the vacancy rate in office buildings, particularly cities like New York City, obviously with all these skyscrapers. Although people are back in the office somewhat, they're still not back full time. And many companies adopted work from home policies. So they're trying to sublease their existing space or reduce their footprint. So that's certainly something that is top of mind, for real estate investors in large cities.
Yeah, I think we have the same issue here in Toronto as well. And then what other areas of law do you find that your practice frequently intersects with, and how much of your practice has this intersection, if any?
Sure. I would say that we work with other teams very closely. In large firms like Skadden and my prior firm, which was Weil, we do have our standalone real estate practice, which we call, dirt real estate. In sort of industry terms, meaning we work on purchase and sale of properties, portfolios, leasing, financing, joint venture, meaning these are standalone real estate transactions which are not part of sort of a larger M&A or other types of deals. But given the, given the extent of M&A activity at Skadden, for example, or private equity activity, we also work closely with these teams because often these deals involve real estate. Sometimes it's one property, but sometimes it's many properties. Sometimes these are, multinational leases. So we work very closely with these teams, I would say. Another team we work closely with is the bankruptcy and restructuring team. Often within the context of, bankruptcy filing, Chapter 11 filing and restructuring, we have to, sell some of the assets or sort of negotiate some of the leases and help sort of the company to re-emerge from bankruptcy. And we also have to learn some of the, bankruptcy rules and codes along the way, which I find interesting. Within real estate itself, I would say that we do work with zoning and land use attorneys, for example, attorneys like Edgar, because large firms often don't have specialists in that space. For example, here we don't have a zoning specialist. If our client is in need of evaluating the zoning for the property or needs to get variance or sort of needs a zoning opinion, then we will go out to a zoning attorney. And we also work with environmental attorneys closely, especially on larger sites like industrial, manufacturing sites. Often these sites have environmental issues, and it's part of the due diligence to, get the phase 1 report to evaluate, to discuss with environmental council.
Good, it keeps things interesting. You're always learning something new. My next question is for Edgar. Edgar, can you speak to the differences in doing this type of work, whether it's in-house or for the government, and how that kind of plays out?
Yes. So I'll bifurcate those, and I'll start with in-house. I'll say when I started practicing 20 years ago, the notion of folks going in-house was because they wanted, frankly, a better work-life balance. And sometimes it was closer towards retirement. You're in your 50s, still need income, still want to work, don't want to work as hard, and don't need to make as much. In-house, what was the route to go? Though I think those days are gone. I think in-house lawyers now work just as hard as big firm lawyers. Maybe it's a little bit easier to detach, and maybe you don't have as many clients and other obligations and responsibilities. But in-house lawyers now, frankly, I think make less, yet still work a lot of hours. With regard to government, I think there's a wide array. I think if you don't work long hours, you're not going to get elevated in any job, any position, and that's true for government lawyers. But I think it's easier, I know it's easier because I've seen it, for a government lawyer to be a little lazier and hide and not sort of be noticed, right? It's not the same billable hour requirement. You don't have to fill out a timesheet every day. Every keystroke isn't being managed and monitored, so it's a little bit easier to not work as hard. But I think if your goal is to elevate within a city attorney, county council type position, then it's really no different. Then it is the same hard work, the same availability, and so forth, to do with, frankly, much less resources, right? I can't speak for Alex, but I'm sure, if Yelena needs something, she needs IT help at 3 a.m. I guarantee you she has IT help at 3 o'clock in the morning. If she needs something printed, she will have someone print it for her and bring it to her house at 4 a.m. Those are luxuries that you have at big firms that when you're in government, and a lot of times in-house, that you don't have. I think firms understand that every minute a lawyer is doing something that's not billable is wasted time. So they try to make our lives as easy as possible to simply bill. Don't worry about the printer not working. There's 18 people here that will fix that printer for you. You just go bill.
That's a good differentiation. And then I know we talked a little bit about the pandemic and work-life balance, but can you touch a little bit about on how it impacted your practice area with respect to mentoring, training, networking for associates?
So I am militant on this, absolutely militant on it. I will say the first 2 weeks of COVID, March of 2020, I worked from home for literally 9 days. The 9th day, I walked into the kitchen and my wife looked at me and said, "Why are you in my kitchen?" And I realized if the marriage was going to survive, I could not be home. So I was one of 2 people that started coming into the office. I have been in the office 5 days a week throughout the entire time. But to really answer your question, and I think Alex mentioned this earlier, there's a reason we're always practicing law. You're never going to be perfect at it. And the best way you're going to learn is shadowing, sitting on calls with partners, overhearing partners on another call and how they're handling a situation. So if you're not around, you're not learning. I very openly tell younger lawyers, those that are in the 5th and 6th year range, you're 2 years behind. You're not where you would have been as a 6-year lawyer had COVID not happened or had you chosen to be in the office 5 days a week. Those that do come in to the office, you see the growth every day. And it's the flip of it of if an assignment comes in and I have the option of going next door to my office and asking someone to do it versus emailing someone, hoping they call me or calling someone and hoping they're not at CVS picking up their dog's prescription, they're not getting the work. The person that's here is getting the work. And that's not to punish. That's, again, just efficiency from my perspective of how I get stuff done. So I think if folks have a desire to grow and become a better lawyer and to grow in their practice, be in the office as much, if not more, than the partners that you not only work for, but the other partners in the office. It's absolutely noticeable, will impact your career trajectory, but frankly, more importantly, it will impact how good of a lawyer you become.
No, I
There's
totally.
no way you can be at home and learning like you learn when you're at the office. It's impossible. It's easy, it's fun. I like being in my pajamas, but it's just not the same.
Christine, I just wanted to add that I was a beneficiary of that sort of assignment situation. Like, I agree that if you're in the office, then when there is an important assignment, people can just walk in and sort of knock on your door and give it to you right there. So I definitely see the benefit of attending the office.
Yeah.
And I'll give a real life example. About 2 hours before this webinar, we got hit with an appeal that frankly we're not expecting on a matter. And it was, oh boy, I need to tell the client in the morning what everything in this 89-page document means. The person who I probably wanted to do was working from home today. My second choice was in the office. I walked in and gave it to them and said, let me know what you think about this in the morning. They're now going to be staffed on this case, and it's a high profile case. It's going to be a couple of 100 hours of billable time for them. It's again, not punishing the person that's home, but it's just easier when I know this person's here today and they're going to be here tomorrow.
No, I totally agree with Yelena and Edgar, both of you. I too was a beneficiary of that. I started my career off the peak of COVID, but I also went in 5 days a week, and I see the benefits of it for sure. Yelena, my next question's for you. Can you give us a sense of what some of the high level issues that are currently impacting your practice area and what they are?
Sure. I think in this industry, the highest level of issues that is on everyone's mind is the high interest rates. It has been, pretty high for a while now. And what that means for real estate investments is that the cost of capital is high, which means that for the investor to borrow money at this cost is going to sort of increase their overall expenses. For the developer who is building ground up construction, that means that the cost of construction is going to be very high. So everybody is eager and is waiting for the Fed to cut the rates. I'm not sure yet when that will happen, but it's really sort of the biggest issue, whoever you talk to. I mean, of course, there are still some activities happening, like investors who can afford to buy all cash. They are not dependent on financing. They go ahead and purchase properties at somewhat discounted rate because of the markets. You can find better deals now and buy a beautiful skyscraper at a discount. So there is activity, but definitely very low and not at pre-pandemic levels. In terms of office space, I already mentioned that definitely investors who invested in office space, they are struggling, and they are pushing, the local government to maybe relax the zoning or land use laws and to remove some of the restrictions so that some of these office buildings can be converted into residential properties. It's really difficult in New York. New York City's zoning laws are very complex, and but we are seeing some, improvements and some initiatives from the government, and some of the office buildings will be converted. And I would say that the other issue that is important in New York is the tax incentive and affordable housing shortage. Until 2022, there was tax incentive law called 421A, which would give the developers certain, property tax incentive in exchange for, building affordable housing. Unfortunately, that incentive expired in 2022, and since then there have been a lot of lobbying and activity to sort of reinstate the law or to adopt a new law. So in April of 2024, the governor announced a new tax incentive. So it looks like there'll be some development and some new construction. So that's what I'm seeing right now.
I'm sure we're all seeing the high interest rate issue in our 3 different markets, but I'm sure that's across the board.
Yes.
Bearing in mind the time over here, I'll address my next question to Alex. What law school courses would you recommend students take if they want to pursue a career in this practice area? And what advice do you have for students or young lawyers aspiring to practice in this area?
So if you're looking to practice in real estate, I've particularly found legal writing-based courses helped just in terms of general contract drafting. My law school actually had a negotiation-based course called Lawyer as Negotiator, and I found that was really helpful in terms of letting you know about styles of negotiation, and I find that comes into practice almost every day. Property was another class that we had, obviously, and real estate transactions. And I also recommend that people just take courses in maybe in areas that they don't think they'd necessarily be interested in. So I took some real estate courses that I never thought I'd be interested in, and then I ended up practicing in real estate. So you never really know what will resonate. And then you asked what advice for lawyers aspiring, just sort of along the lines of what Edgar was saying and what everyone's sort of echoed. Like once you do get in your foot in the door and you find that this is the area you want to be in, like learn as much as you can, do it by attending seminars, conferences, whatever you can do. And especially most importantly, by shadowing the lawyers, getting into the office, shadowing the lawyers you work for, asking, even if you can't bill on a file, just asking to attend a phone call or a call or something like that with the lawyer where they're negotiating, so you can see their style and learn from it.
And not only are you going to learn from that, because that's absolutely right, that partner is going to love you that you're willing to just give 30 minutes of your time to learn. They
Right.
will start investing their time in you.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
At the end of the day, when I have to decide who I'm investing my time in on the team, I'm going to invest in the person that wants to learn and elevate, not the one that's here for a couple of years. It's an exit.
No, that's helpful.
And just if you don't mind, because I'm going to really quick answer part of that question as well, because I can't shut up. I agree with Alex, but it comes all down to writing and critical thinking. Any course you can take that'll help your writing and your critical thinking skills, such as a negotiation, an ITAP course, just do that. That's I don't care what law school you've gone to, the greatest or the worst. Some of the worst first years we've had have been Harvard grads who don't have the writing skills or the critical thinking skills, but they're brilliant human beings. You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to write really well and think really well.
Yeah, I agree. The practical courses I've always found the most helpful, and the rest you just learn on the job. So bearing in mind, again, we have 5 minutes here, but what are some trends or changes that you foresee in the practice area? I'd like to open this up to hopefully all of you, just to get a different perspective from all the markets. Maybe Yelena, you can lead us on this one.
Sure, but I did want to also add that if you can take courses in taxation or accounting, those are really helpful too, especially in complex real estate deals. In terms of trends, I think, I already touched upon office to residential conversions. That's sort of the biggest trend now in New York City, to the extent that developers can do that. They're trying to accomplish that. I would say that also we're seeing a lot of new amenities, sort of health and well-being type amenities added to the buildings, both residential and commercial. To encourage, workers and tenants to return to the office, such as meditation rooms, green rooftops and yoga classes, coffee bars, you name it. So definitely investors are budgeting for sort of extra expenses in amenity space. And I would say we are definitely, preparing for more work in data center space and also solar farms, solar sort of energy and infrastructure type work.
Okay, Edgar, what about you?
The trends are mostly how buildings are designed, and everything Yelena said is definitely stuff we're seeing. On the multifamily, what we're seeing, and it frustrates me, because based on my prior response, a lot of high rises are including more public workspace. So you don't have to be in your 800 square foot apartment all day. Just like a hotel, there's a fancy business center, so you get to go down there and be somewhat social in your work. But other than what Yelena said, really, that's just what I would add. More for work from home ease.
That's
I
great.
hope those spaces stay vacant forever.
Exactly. Alex, what's the Toronto take on it?
So I do think there is a little bit more of a return to the office now. So I think office leasing will eventually pick back up, but it'll take some time. I've seen that retail leasing is coming back pretty strong after COVID, so that's a good sign. In Canada, where cannabis was legalized, we saw a crazy amount of retail stores open up in a very short amount of time, especially in Toronto. There's like 3 cannabis shops every block downtown Toronto. So I don't think these will survive over the next few years. You see that market's not going to be what it was before. Industrial leasing picked up and is still hot. AI is going to affect, I think, every area of law over time. It's going to be integrated into different legal practices, but we have to be very careful as to how we incorporate it and how we use it, especially in commercial leasing, I think.
Okay, we're just on schedule. We have 2 minutes left. I'd like to open the floor for any questions. If anyone has any, you can use the Q&A feature or the chat box. I don't think I see any here. Okay, maybe we don't have questions now, but I'd welcome to all of you to reach out to any of us if any questions come up later on, or feel free to reach out and ask. I think we can wrap this up then. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today, and I'd like to thank our 3 wonderful panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to answer all our questions about their practice. I'd also like to note that today's webinar is recorded and it'll be posted on the Armenian Bar YouTube page. So if you have any family or friends who are interested in the topic, feel free to share the link with them once it's out. Okay, thanks again, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.